It's a wonderful time in life when new bike day rolls around, but it's not without its problems. Mainly, getting it set up right just for you. Right, many a good day. Start at the local bike shop. The excitement of heading there and checking out all the shiny new bikes. And there's so many to choose from, it can be a bit confusing, but don't worry. An ultimate explainer is linked in the description down below if you're not too sure. But once you've chosen the thing, the problem I see all too often is, well, how do you get the flipping thing to fit right? So there's a lot of reasons you want your bike to fit properly. Comfort, efficiency, and to get the optimal performance out of that bike. If your bike doesn't fit properly, for example, saddle too high or stem too long, then it's going to make it difficult to ride and extremely painful to spend any long periods of time on. So to get it to fit properly, the gold star creme de la creme route you could go down is going to a dedicated shop with specific bike fitting capabilities, if you like, a service. Yeah. Which brings in our good pal, Oli Beckingsale once more. Now, we're here at his shop in Bristol, BW Cycling, and you've got specific sort of bike fitting tools, right?
Yeah, so we've been bike fitting 300 people a year for 12 years now.
Okay.
Some people, all the new bikes we sell at the shop, road and mountain bike, we'll put the rider in the correct position. But we do a lot of people who've got injuries. You know, we set their current bikes up, get them all sorted. And we see some really big injuries, you know, operation type stuff that's been caused just by real basic setup.
Okay.
So on a bike, you've got a huge amount of repetition, thousands of pedal strokes. Yeah. And the issue is it's in a fixed position. It doesn't have to be too far out to cause a load of mischief.
Yeah, and the common misconception, I think, is a lot of people think that a bike fitting or getting a bike to fit properly is just for road riders who spend hours, obviously, in the same position in the saddle. But actually, on a mountain bike, it is just as important.
Yeah, I mean, essential for road. You're in a fixed position and you're not really moving around. On a mountain bike, it's more dynamic. You're in the saddle, you're out the saddle, you stop, start. So less essential to be to the mill, but still important to be close.
Okay, well, on that note then, I've brought my new Grand Canyon here. This is a new bike to me. We're going to get it in the stand, but I should reiterate, what we're about to do, although sounds very fancy and can be, obviously, a cost, there are versions of what we're going to do that can be done leaning against the wall, right, which we'll touch on as we go through it.
Yeah, we'll explain how we're setting up the bike, why we're setting up the bike, but also some shortcuts that everyone can do at home.
Brilliant. Let's get it in the stand. Right on, we've got her in the stand. Where do we start from here?
So first thing we're going to do is going to hop you on the bike. When we're setting up a bike, we work our way up through. So we check the pedals, make sure they're in the right place if you're clip-ins, but you're on a flat today. We're going to put the saddle in the right place first. We always work up from the pedals. So pedals, if you've got clip-ins, then get your saddle, then you come forward to the bars.
All right, well, it feels very low to begin with. So what do we do to start?
Right, so what we're going to do is I've got all the fancy kit, so we're going to do a little film clip from the side, which we can then analyse, and we can look at some angles and put you in the right place. And then, like I say, we're going to show everyone else how they can get it close at home using their leaning against the wall, their own camera, or just through eye.
All right, let's show it what it shouldn't look like first.
Okay, you can stop there.
Oh, I pulled the brake to stop. I just pulled the brake to stop.
We've done a little film clip. This is just the bike out the box, you've jumped on it, zero setup, okay? Yeah. Right, so first thing we're going to look at is saddle height. So top of the pedal stroke, it's really at the top here where we just start to push down, really using your quads, a lot of pressure going through. So at the moment, the seat's on the low side. And what we're looking at in terms of low is this angle here between your knee, your hip and your ankle. We always want this to be greater than 70 degrees. You're at 57 at the moment.
That's way lower.
So seat too low. What happens when your seat's too low is you start getting a lot of forces going through the knee. So a lot of pressure on the kneecap, that's where your basic knee injuries come from.
Okay.
So we need to raise the saddle up a little bit. The flip side, bottom of the pedal stroke, we want good extension in the legs, okay? At the moment we're too low. Normally this range, we're at 116 degrees. Normally we want that about 140 or so. If we get
140?
Yeah, quite a chunk higher. So it's not locked out, it's a bend in the back of the knee, but we've got too much bend. When you're sitting too low, what happens is you're not getting the most out of the bottom part of the pedal stroke. So you're not using your calf muscles as much or the hamstring.
Yeah.
So it means you're just hammering the quads, okay? We want to get a full pedal stroke, not just that kind of stomping down, all right? So again, saddle up a little bit.
Gotcha.
Flip side to that, if the saddle's too high, so this is like 150, 160 degrees, what you happen is the leg starts to get too much extension. you get resistance, the hips drop. And you'll see someone who saddles too high for their flexibility, when they're riding along, you'll see the hips rolling around. It puts a load of stress on the hips and the lower back. Really important one, reach of the bike, okay? Massive for handling, and also massive for you looking after your core strength, your back as well. Okay, with this one here, basically, we're going to have a real problem, not so much with back strength, it's going to be the handling of the bike, okay? We're way too short on this bike at the moment, okay? You can see we're up here.
Yeah,
okay?
T-Rex
You can't move your body weight around, you can't adjust if the trail drops away, you've got too much weight on the front wheel, so we need to be probably a little bit longer.
And what sort of range should this be in?
We're looking, if you think that, if you're done that plank exercise or pressed up, you're about 80 degrees through your body and through into your elbow, okay? We're sitting now at about 60 degrees, too short. Brilliant. The flip side though, if we're too long, what happens as our arms come out, the arms start to lock, so you've lost the control. We haven't got a set of rods, we've just got a pair of rods, okay? So we're not going to handle the bike so well. If you go even further out, the arms push forward. When they push forward, you shrug. Okay. So if anyone's got a lot of pain up into their neck, put money the fact they're pushing their arms forward. As soon as the arms push forward, you stop using the big strong muscles, so we're weaker. Again, when we're descending and we're off-road, we're going to handle the bike poorly, and also you're going to put a load of stress on your back as well. So this one, basically, we need to grow the bike.
Right, let's get some correct numbers on there. So what Ollie's doing here quickly is, obviously he put the saddle up to where he roughly thought. It was still a little bit too low. So he's an experienced bike fitter, like I said, he's done many of these. So he's just put it up a little bit more, just adjusted the saddle slightly as well. And we should also say, if you're running a bike with a dropper, do it with the dropper up, right? Yeah. Because that's obviously when you're going to be at full extension.
And the drop seat post, game changer for bike fitters.
Yeah,
so
100%.
Not just for technical stuff. So pre-dropper post, it was always that compromise on a mountain bike. You wanted to have your seat high for pedalling, but if you hit any single track, you wanted to drop it down. So you ran it always a bit on the low side. The nice thing with a dropper, we can put the seat in the optimal position for pedalling. But then, of course, we can get it out the way on the tech. So dropper post is a winner for bike.
And what are we doing here real quick?
The bars were rolled right back, so a bit of a tweak. We're just rolling those up for you. Okay, just a slightly better angle.
Which is going to change positions of levers and whatnot, but we're going to get to that later on.
Yeah, this was
talk about that in a bit.
Me having a little tweak, it'll also affect the reach a little bit. So
we've just had a little run through again. It's definitely a lot more comfortable. Certainly feels a lot more, or a lot less cramped, if you like. I don't feel all T-Rexed up on there. Ollie's obviously just checked me out on screen here, and we're certainly getting towards that 140 number that he said. But obviously everyone's very different in terms of body length, leg length, arm length, you know. So I might have short legs compared to someone who's also 6 foot but has longer legs. So we've just jacked it up a little bit more. We'll hop back on.
Little tweak.
Let's see how it goes. We're feeling better, Ol.
All good, mate?
Yeah, we're feeling better.
Cool, right.
You're just checking me out there?
Checking you out.
Nice.
So before we were down at 56 degrees, we've got the saddle up now, we're over that magic 70 degrees. So that means there's less stress going through the knee. There's more power going through the pedals. Flip side to that, the bottom of the pedal stroke, we're now into that 140s. So when we're here, we're really using the quads, front of the legs. And then when we get to about here, then we want to push through the toe, which uses the calf muscles, and then we can use the hamstrings at the back of the leg, and we get a really good full pedal stroke. And you can see here, see the toe dropping, calves working now. We get that nice pull through. So that's what having the saddle in the right place. Less stress on the knee, using all the muscles effectively.
Perfect.
So for somebody at home, how they can get close to what we're doing without all this, really good one. If you place the crank at your pedal down, and then what we want to do is we want to put your heel, so the crank's vertical, pop your heel on the pedal, okay? And when you're there, you want your leg to be almost locked out. Okay.
So that's fully locked out there.
Then
so it's literally just
foot back to where it should be,
so
back near the balls of your feet. Then we get that bit of a bend in the back of the leg.
Okay, and this can be done by anyone on your own, kind of leaning against the wall in the garage, just wherever. So you don't need all this fancy pants equipment. It's very nice to have, and it's a far more accurate way of doing it. But as Ollie just said, this will get you very close to those numbers.
So for somebody who's coming to see us who's got an injury is going to be on the bike for a long time. We need to really fine tune things. Yeah. But if somebody's riding, they're just getting into it, they're starting and they're riding off-road, which is, like I said, it's not so much stress as riding on a road bike. Yeah. That will get you pretty close. What I would suggest is we set the saddle height using your heel on the pedal, like we just did, and then I'll go for a ride and get one of your mates to ride behind you. And we want to make sure that the hips are stable. So if you want to hop on the bike for me, let's have a look where we're at. What we're looking for here is in your lower back. So if you think your spine and your pelvis creates an upside down T, we want that to be pretty stable. If Rich had the saddle too high for his flexibility, core strength, we'd start seeing this back starting to roll around. If that's too high, knock it down 5 mil, go for another ride, and we want to see that stability in your lower back. Cool, so just as an example, we've just put the saddle up 2 centimetres from what was optimal, and you can see straight away, Rich has got your hips, back's moving from side to side, all these muscles are working really hard to stabilise.
Yeah, I'm not doing that
so
for much
after
longer.
a long ride, that's going to give backache, it's going to come up into the hips as well. So saddle too high, that's what to watch out for.
It's putting loads more pressure onto my arms as well.
Yeah, everything. And you're going to handle the bike worse, higher centre of gravity. So it's not just a fitting from a pedalling point of view, it's bike handling as well.
Rubbish. Fore and aft.
Right, so we've got saddle height, all know about that one. Then we've got fore and aft, backwards and forwards on the saddle.
Okay.
What you can do is that one, we're looking to get the knee, front of the kneecap, roughly over the centre of the pedal, or slightly in front, okay? If the knee is too far forward, puts a huge amount of stress on the knee. So the first bike fit we did, you were way too far forward. You're going to have a lot of forces going through the knee. If anyone's ever done any squats or gym work, you're always taught to come bum backwards.
Yeah, keep the weight on the heels, right?
Exactly right. You never come knee forward. Puts a huge amount of stress through the kneecap. So we don't, too far forward knees. If the saddle is way far back, it puts a lot of load through the lower back. And again, the bike's going to be unbalanced from a technical point of view as well. Easy way to do it yourself. If you hop yourself on the bike, we've got our fancy bit of kit. We drop a plumb line down and we want that to run just in front of the pedal axle.
Which it is.
If you wanted to do it at home, get a little plumb line, a weighted string.
Yeah.
You could sit on the bike, drop that from your kneecap, and you want that to run roughly through the pedal axle. Okay. So a nice, easy one again to do yourself at home.
Okay, now let's quickly talk about angle of the saddle, because this one is really important. This one, obviously, you've done a lot of riding, I've done a lot of riding. Yeah. This is really important for eliminating pressure points.
So a start point for a saddle, like this one is you run it roughly level, parallel with the floor.
That's where I always start from.
If we're feeling a lot of pressure through the front half of the saddle, which is not what we want. We want most of the pressure to feel like they're coming on your sit bones, like you're sitting in a chair.
2 big bones in your ass.
Exactly. So if we're coming too far forward, you could notch the saddle down just a couple of degrees. Yeah. Some people go loads. They think, well, that's a good idea, let's do it to the extreme. Just a tiny little bit is all you need just to take the edge off. If you're getting a lot of pressure on the front of the saddle, you really want to check the reach of the bike. Right. If the bike's too long, what happens is people pull forward, and as they pull forward, they pull onto the front of the seat. So check the angle, check the reach. If the saddle's too high at the front, it will catch you on the front.
And you will know if there's too much pressure on the front.
Yeah, and it puts a load of load through the lower back as well. Yeah. So generally a good start point, get that saddle level.
Okay, mate, I feel nice and comfy on the bike. My legs aren't too stretched. They're not too crunched up. Pressure points are all good. Front end of the bike, so we're talking stem length, bar width.
Yeah, 100%. So the big thing here, this is about handling. We didn't want to have said before, we didn't want to be too long. So if you pop your hands on the bars for me. Gotcha. When we're here, what we want to do is we check the reach of the bike. So you're looking for a press-up position. So straight through your body and through your upper arm.
Okay.
On a road bike, you'd be about 80 degrees. On a mountain bike, we want to be a little less, about 70 degrees. Okay. The reason being, on a mountain bike, if you start dropping down anything too technical, you want to be able to move your body weight backwards. Right. If the bike's long, where can you go? You've got no scope to move your weight back. If the arms lock out, they're just a set of rods, you're not going to handle the bike so well. So we want a bit of bend. Reach coming forward as well, looks good as well. Okay, shoulders are down, we're engaging all the stronger muscles. Yep. Not too much load coming up into the neck.
Don't want to be like that.
If the bike is too long, the obvious one is we can shorten this section, the stem. They come in different lengths, different angles. We can bring that a bit closer. We can also, if the bike feels super cramped, you can add a centimetre or two. Okay. But you need to be careful. the stem length does affect the handling and how sharp it feels. So that's a balance on a mountain bike. It's a balance between how the bike feels on the trail technically and the actual fit itself.
Yeah.
For what you've got at the moment,
perfect. Bar width?
Bar width, again, a narrow handlebar is going to make the bike handle very quickly. Okay. If it's wider, it's going to be more stable. Okay. If somebody's doing, again, it's prioritizing comfort over tech. If we want tech, we want a pretty wide bar. If you drop down to here for me.
There you go.
Nice stable position. It's starting to feel a bit like a press-up position.
Yeah.
Okay. You can use your pecs and you can use the triceps effectively. If we're too narrow, it's going to make life harder work.
So what width bar would you run as standard on your cross-country bike?
720.
Yeah, see, I run the full 760s.
Yeah, so it's just, if I'm out here, it's a lot of stress, I just bring it down a little bit. And we're seeing it, smaller riders, extra small bikes are coming out the box with full-length bars. Don't be scared just to trim them down a little bit. Again, less is more, okay? 10 mil at a time.
I was going to say, that's a great point, because it's easy to take width off the bars. You can't add it back on once you cut it off.
Yeah, so do 10 mil, go for a ride, see what it feels like. Do it in small increments, that's the key. But for you, the bar width, bar reach on this bike is cool. Just need a little tweak to set up the controls.
Great, okay, so we've got the bike fitting pretty much bob on. Now we obviously need to go and ride that, and then there are fine tunes that we can make to our suspension, the cockpit here. So for that, I think we need to head to the woods.
Better on the trail, mate.
All right, let's go. Right, we are in the woods. We've just been for a spin round Ashton Court here. A nice sort of blue loop to get us warmed up. And we've done sort of the bike fit and got it really good from an anatomical point of view, right? It fits really well. But we can take it to the next level and get a really personal feel to it with things like cockpit setup, so our lever positions, tyre setup and suspension. So I think we should dive into those. Yeah, let's look at the cockpit first. Okay. So the big thing, you want to be able to, it's the brake lever position itself, the angle of them, and how far inboard. Out the box, 9 times out of 10, the brake levers are as far out and as close to the grips as possible. Yeah. So what happens is we're not going to get the right leverage on the brakes. Exactly. So best thing I would do is I would loosen those off a little bit, keep everything loose and the gear shifter. Put your hands where they like to be comfortable. And what you want to do, most people, it's one finger braking with a hydraulic brake. Some are two. That's it. They're much more powerful brakes than what they used to be. So you can get away with pulling them with just one finger. So put your hands where they want to be and then move the levers inboard till we've got, I ride one finger, so that this one would need to come quite a lot further. Yeah, they're long levers. So we've shifted that inboard a little. So essentially the end of the lever is now kind of, or my finger's sitting nicely in the nook of the end of the lever. So I've got maximum leverage on there. Yeah, and then what we want to do is just set the angle for you. Now I was always taught, it kind of follows, this is a basic rule of thumb, it would follow sort of the line of your arm when you're sitting down. 100%. Yeah? You want a nice natural wrist position, so the hand is just slightly kicked up a little bit. This will change though, so I should add that, you know, if you do a lot of maybe real steep, aggressive downhill riding, things like that, you might actually end up flattening that lever off, bringing it up a touch, because you'll find your body weight shifted over the back a lot more. Vice versa, XC riders, on my XC bike, my lever position actually drops a little bit because I do spend a little bit more time sitting up or standing up on the bike. So if it's really flat and I'm up, I've got to kind of rotate my hand around, right? Now, when it comes to the shifter, you want to be careful because depending on your thumb or hand size, you've got to be able to reach the paddles nice and easily, right? So your thumb should sit nicely kind of on the center of the paddle, I would say, really. You want to be able to push them with kind of maximum force. You don't want to have to move your hand ever. If you're holding on here and you can reach the brake lever, but your thumb can't reach the paddles of the shifter, you might need to do a little bit of jigging around, right? And that one's all good. Spot on. Okay, let's do the same on the other side. Once you've got your levers kind of at the right angle, you then need to set where your lever is in relation to the handlebar. Now, on a lot of brakes, you'll have a little winder or an Allen key just nestled kind of behind the lever there, which will adjust the reach and the bite point potentially. Now, that will change for every person, obviously depending on the length of your fingers and how far your reach is. So you might want to just have a little play around with that one where's most comfortable. We pretty much set everything up there. Now, one addition which we don't have on this bike is a dropper. But it's the same principles, right? Gotta love a dropper. Yeah, you do. Like I said before about saddle height setup,
It means we can get that optimal seat height and then obviously get it away on the tech stuff, but you want that lever close to hand. So the same as where you've set up the shifter on the right side, your drop approach is probably all your lockout levers on some bikes. It's probably going to be on the left-hand side. You want that, so again, naturally, it's right to your thumb. You don't want to be having to reach or moving your hand around excessively to get to it. So
perfect. Okay, well, maybe I should think about getting a dropper on this one. Right, let's move on to the next bit. I feel under pressure. Tyre pressures.
Oh, good.
You like that? Okay, so Nick, don't laugh. Cameraman's laughing at me. Let's talk tyre pressures.
Yes.
Again, this varies depending on type of tyre, type of rider, and actually rider size to a degree, doesn't it? Obviously, your weight.
Yeah, no, I mean, if we're looking at the average starter bike, it's probably got more of a cross-country vibe to it. Like this one. And you're probably running about a 2.2 to 2.4 inch tyre. With a kind of intermediate tread, so not big knobbles like a downhill tyre, something that will roll and do a bit of everything.
Quite a low profile, slightly more rounded tread pattern to it, isn't it?
But the tyre pressure, like you say, makes a huge difference to how the bike rides. A lot of people, I reckon, on average, most people getting into the sport would have their tyres set too hard, so probably more about 50 PSI.
Really?
Yeah.
Oof.
And actually, we can tell that if we just use the thumb gauge, we haven't got tyre pressure.
The old squeeze.
If we give it a squeeze, the thumbs will only just go into a tyre a bit.
Yeah, okay.
You're less likely to get an impact puncture, but the tyre's going to lose loads of grip.
That's it.
A lower pressure tyre means that around the rocks and the roots, the tyre will bend round, be a bit more pliable, a bit more grip and a bit more comfort.
Yeah, now I've got an example. So base settings for me, which I'll normally go to, I weigh 85 kilos, I ride pretty hard, will be 25 PSI at the front, 27 PSI at the rear. I'll always go, and generally this is kind of another rule of thumb, slightly firmer at the rear because it takes a lot more of the hits, right?
Yeah.
Once you start sort of picking the front wheel over bumps, the back's taking all the impact, especially on a hardtail where you don't have suspension as well.
Yeah, I think 25 to 30 PSI is a really nice ballpark for all-round trail riding. And I think if we were going to squeeze again, you've got a nice fancy tyre pressure gauge.
Yes.
But if we've got the thumb pressure gauge, rock hard is about 50, 60 PSI.
Oh, yeah.
25 to 30, if I give that tyre a squeeze, I can get the thumbs in quite easily.
Yeah.
We've got a fair bit of squidge in the tyres. That's what we're after.
Yeah, and we've been talking about a cross-country style tyre here. If we were to change to an enduro or downhill type tyre, which is 2.4 to 2.6, it's much thicker casing, so that kind of supports it in the turns. You can actually afford to run a lower pressure because it's generally a softer compound as well, which is, you know, there to mould and conform to the ground and grip. Obviously, they're a lot more aggressive, so you might consider dropping the pressure zones. But as a baseline, go kind of 25 to 30, like Ollie said. Have a little play. If you find yourself slipping around a lot or you're really struggling up climbs, you're not getting grip, generally means the tyre's too firm. Or obviously, if it's too soft, you know, the tyre's squirming round corners, it's tinging off the rim or you're getting a lot of punctures.
Up it a bit.
Higher pressure. More pressure then, let's talk forks. Right, Ollie, we're going to talk suspension now. This is a huge subject, so a really in-depth video from Tech is linked in the description down below. But we're going to kind of give you a base setting to get you started and get you out on the trails. Now, most suspension units are air-sprung, especially when it comes to forks these days, although you still will find some with a coil or a spring in there. And actually, talking of coils, it's a lot more common to find a rear shock with a spring in it, but a lot of, you know, rear shocks are air-sprung as well. Now, to begin with, I think we need to set sag, don't we? Now, what is sag?
So sag is how much the fork compresses in its travel. So on this fork, I think we've got about 100 mil of travel. So what we want to do is we want the fork to float on the trail. So we want to run at about 25% of that sag. So in this case, about 25 mil of the travel is used up just with our normal body weight.
Okay, just sitting on it.
That's going to give us more comfort and more grip on the front wheel.
To adjust your air pressure, you're going to need a shock pump. Now, this is a specially designed pump to handle higher pressures that are going to be in the fork or the rear shock unit.
So to set that one, we would sit on the bike in a riding position with all your kit, whatever you're going to ride with, and then just mark how much under normal load that fork is compressing. Same as you've got a rear suspension, sit on the bike and see how much just under normal load the fork's setting. If we're running at about 25% of the travel as a start position, that will give you a real nice baseline setting.
Okay, and now to actually find out how much sag your bike is under or your suspension is under. Quite often there's a little elastic band around the stanchions of the forks or the stanchion of the rear shock as well. So when you can push that one all the way down, when you sit, it'll come up, and you can therefore just visually or measure exactly how much it's used. On a coil rear shock, obviously you don't have anything like that. So measure from the back of the seat down to the tyre, take that measurement, sit on the bike, obviously kit it up again, retake that measurement, maybe get someone to give you a hand there, and obviously then you can work out the difference and if it's about 25%, 30%. And then that should be enough to get you going. And then you can dive even further into it, and we can look at things like compression, preload, rebound, volume spacers, and how all of these different things will affect your suspension and how it works as well. But I think what we've gone through is a great beginning point. I think you actually got a good point on rebound there, because that's quite an important one.
Yeah, so we see, I think from people we see coming in the workshop and people on new bikes, it's the rebound setting, the one that people seem to get wrong or not understand what that's doing. So the rebound, we can press the fork down when we hit a bump. The rebound is how quick the fork's coming back. If we've got no rebound added to the bike, it's a pogo stick. It's going to push down, come straight back up. You're going to have to use your arms to control it.
So it actually feels bumpier almost.
Yeah, less comfort, less traction on the bike. Most forks, this one as well, it has a rebound setting on the bottom of the right fork leg with a plus or a minus. So what we want to do with this one is we push down and we come up. You don't want the fork to return at the same speed. You want it to be a little bit sticky.
Okay.
If it's got too much rebound, so the reverse, as we push down and lift the front wheel, it's not going to return in time. So we're going to hit one bump, and it's still going to be compressed when you hit the next one. So it's
it's like packing, isn't it? They call it packing, where basically it's just going lower and lower for its travel because it's not coming back up quickly.
But have a little play. Set the sag first, and then have a little play with rebound. But I think people who are just getting into it, that rebound's something that makes a big difference.
All right. Well, look, there you go. You've got some kind of basic ideas and settings to get going with, to get out on the trail. Ollie, thank you very much for giving us a hand setting this bike up, and hopefully some great tips for you lot out there to set your bikes up with as well. But I think now we need to go hit the trail again.
Get riding.
Mate, thanks very much.